Oh, hello. With Halloween just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to go over this specific holiday in the Harry Potter series. I can't see a thing with these Harry Potter glasses. I'm putting my real glasses on. Honestly, they're not that far off. They look pretty similar. Halloween is actually a pretty meaningful and eventful day in the wizarding world, so there's a fair amount to go over. If you enjoy this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help the channel with the algorithm. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social medias, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. And speaking of my other social medias, I'm gonna do something fun. If you, your kids, or anyone else you know dresses up as anything Harry Potter related, send it to me on Instagram. I'm gonna post everything you send me on my story to spread some Harry Potter joy. Also, before we start, I just want to share a fun Harry Potter Halloween tradition that I have. So years ago, my grandmother and I came up with a funny inside joke about this holiday. She was actually the person that got me into the series when I was really young. And one day when we were reading the first chapter together, we saw something really interesting. McGonagall says that she wouldn't be surprised if the day Harry defeated Voldemort would be called Harry Potter Day. The day he did this was, of course, Halloween. So whenever my grandmother and I would talk about Halloween, we would just call it Harry Potter Day. Even years after she's passed, I still get a kick out of calling it that. I'm sure she would love that I'm passing on our inside joke to a whole community of Harry Potter fans. I really do think that would make her day. But anyway, let's get into the actual video. J.K. Rowling clearly enjoyed putting the theme of Halloween into her series. One example of this is the name The Deathly Hallows. Rowling explained this years ago, and it gets kinda complicated, so try to stay with me. Many people celebrate All Saints' Day on November 1st, the day after Halloween. This means that October 31st is All Saints' Eve. Then people combined All Saints' Eve with Halloween, both of which fall on October 31st, giving us the name All Hallows' Eve. All Hallows' Eve is where Rowling got the name for the Deathly Hallows. All Hallows' Eve was also the day in which Harry first cheated death, while the Deathly Hallows' purpose is to do the exact same thing, to cheat death or become the master of death. And when Harry did cheat death, he did so in the town Godric's Hollow, connecting this even more. Rowling's thought process is absolutely wild for this, by the way. Going deep into Harry Potter lore, Halloween was actually a controversial topic when it came to the Wizarding World government. Before the series took place, Cornelius Fudge proposed putting restrictions on how wizards and witches were allowed to celebrate Halloween to uphold the International Statute of Secrecy. Famous Wizarding World singer Celestina Warbeck controversially disagreed with this proposed legislation. This was mainly because it made her cancel her Halloween concert that featured banshees as her backup singers though. Others who tried to fight this included Dagbert Pips, who owned a shop called Pumpkins R Us, where he sold different types of magical pumpkins, meaning this legislation would most likely make him shut down his shop. Others defended this legislation though. A wizard named Stanford Jorkins, a Ministry of Magic spokesperson, wrote an article highlighting how wards at St. Mungo's Hospital were busier than ever at Halloween, and even mentioned a wizard who had been in the hospital wing since last year's Halloween after having his head flipped backwards because of a Halloween prank gone wrong. There were other examples of this as well, like one year where a vampire run amok and had to be lured away from a muggle girl who had a raw piece of steak. Ultimately, there was a compromise. The ministry put stricter regulations on Halloween, but the new laws also allowed for the government to be a bit more relaxed on October 31st, mainly with how wizards and witches dressed while in the muggle world on this day. When looking at the series, there are a few small things that pop up on Halloween. This includes the day in which Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, or Nearly Headless Nick, was killed in the year 1492. On October 31st of that year, the executioner's axe was unfortunately blunt due to the grindstone used to sharpen the blade being misplaced. Thus, it took 45 hacks to kill Nicholas, and even then, his head was only partially severed. Whew, man, that is absolutely brutal. Because Nick chose to be a ghost, his death day was then celebrated every year on Halloween, many of these taking place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where he resided. In the game Hogwarts Mystery, which isn't technically canon but we're gonna go over it just for fun, they cover several events that took place on Halloween. On October 31st, 1984, the werewolf Greyback and his army attacked Hogwarts, entering from the Forbidden Forest. He injured a few students, but ultimately retreated when he caught the scent of Albus Dumbledore. Then in the year 1986 in the game, the main characters traveled to Godric's Hollow on Halloween, and there they encountered the ghost of the goblin Ragnarok, who actually blinded a girl with a curse, but don't worry, he eventually fixed it. In the late 1980s, there were events plagued by who everyone thought was Pumpkin Johnny, a former student who years ago got his head trapped in a pumpkin from a Pumpkinhead jinx. He disappeared into the Forbidden Forest all those years ago and was never found. Now, everyone thought that they had summoned Johnny when a student tapped on a pumpkin saying his name 3 times on Halloween. Weird things then started to happen, many of which were done by other students, but some things were unexplainable and were clearly done by Pumpkin Johnny. Having recently played this game myself, I can see why it did not resonate with Harry Potter fans. The plot is almost as bad as The Cursed Child. Getting back to the plot of the 7 books though, there was one character who was affected by Halloween more than anybody else, and that is of course Harry Potter himself. Some fans online figured out that because Harry's birthday was July 31st, 1980, he might have been conceived on Halloween night, which was exactly 9 months earlier, the normal amount of time a woman is pregnant. I would love to know who figured that out, because that is an absolutely hilarious detail to look into. On Halloween night in 1981, we have the moment that would change Harry's life forever. This was the night Voldemort decided to take care of Harry to avoid the prophecy about the two of them coming true. Technically, the prophecy could have been about Neville Longbottom as well, but as Dumbledore explained, because Voldemort went after Harry that night, it cemented the fact that the prophecy was about Harry and not Neville. On the way to the Potter's house, a young Muggle boy that was trick-or-treating told Voldemort that he liked his costume, but as he got closer to Voldemort and saw under his hood, the smile on the boy's face faltered and he ran away. Voldemort considered killing the boy before he reached his mother, but then decided it was unnecessary. When Voldemort reached the Potter's house on that Halloween night, he murdered James as James yelled to his wife to run. However, Lily had nowhere to go, and when Voldemort reached the bedroom she and Harry were in, he told Lily to step aside. She refused though, instead protecting Harry, and she shielded him from Voldemort's killing curse, taking her life. Then, when Voldemort went to kill Harry, the protection that Lily had put on her son by sacrificing herself made Voldemort's killing curse rebound and hit him instead. On that Halloween night, Harry became an orphan, a Horcrux of Lord Voldemort, and a famous legend. After Halloween 1981, this holiday followed Harry for many years after. 10 years later in 1991, he was once again faced with possible death as he faced a fully grown troll who stood at 12 feet tall. With the help of Ron and Hermione, Harry once again escaped death as he completed the miraculous feat of taking the troll down. One good thing did come out of that night though, and that was the Golden Trio coming together as Harry and Ron now saw Hermione as their friend. 1 year later, on Halloween night 1992, Harry once again faced something terrible. When he left Nearly Headless Nick's 500th Death Day party, he heard a voice that nobody else could hear as it said it was going to kill. Harry then discovered a note written on the wall that said that the Chamber of Secrets had been opened, as well as Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, petrified. Everybody found Harry at the scene of the crime, making way for some of the worst days Harry ever had at Hogwarts. Because of the events that took place on Halloween, everyone thought that Harry was the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets. 1 year later, on Halloween 1993, another major event took place at Hogwarts. Sirius Black, who at the time was thought to be a mass murderer, entered the castle and slashed the fat lady's portrait, traumatizing her. This made the school go on full lockdown, as Harry and all of the other students were forced to sleep in the Great Hall. The teachers had their eyes on Harry more than anybody else though. This was because it seemed as though Harry was the one Black was after. The person that slashed her portrait, Sirius Black, was also someone greatly affected by the events that took place on Halloween night 1981. Sirius lost his best friends that night, and he decided to avenge them by going after the person who had betrayed Lily and James. This ultimately led to Peter Pettigrew framing Sirius and locking him up in Azkaban. Then, on Halloween night 1993, exactly 12 years later to the very day, Sirius tried to enter Gryffindor Common Room to once again avenge his fallen friends and kill the person that made that day so terrible. That's kind of poetic, though it probably would have been more poetic if he actually succeeded. 1 year later, on Halloween night 1994, Harry once again had something miserable happen to him. This was the night the 3 Triwizard Champions were chosen, and Harry was then unexpectedly selected as a 4th champion. This Halloween night, like his second year, led to some of the worst days Harry had at Hogwarts, as everyone thought he had entered his name himself, leading to tons of scrutiny and honestly just straight up bullying. And just the icing on the cake to make this as bad as possible, Harry lost his friend Ron during this time. And now we get to the Cursed Child, which I mentioned earlier. I normally say that this story is garbage, but the moment I'm gonna go over actually brings Harry's Halloween trauma full circle. The way the plot got us here though is garbage writing, but we're just gonna put that aside for right now. In the story, Harry revisits the night his mother and father died on Halloween night in 1981, the night his life changed forever. When Harry is faced with Voldemort arriving at his former house in Godric's Hollow, he decides to not look away and watches it happen. Hermione and Ron tell him that he doesn't have to do it alone, and they stand beside him. When he watches his father die, his wife Ginny and son Albus take either of his hands, and Harry leans into them as they hold him up. Then, when he sees Lily in the window, he says how beautiful his mother looks. When she's killed, Harry falls to the floor in a mess of grief. Harry had to experience this moment though, and he had everyone he cared about around him as he did so. It was what finally made him accept and move on from that fateful Halloween night that has haunted him for so many years. I hope everyone has a fantastic Halloween this year, or should I say, Harry Potter Day. Dress up, get loads of candy, and again, if you, your kids, or anyone else you know dresses up as anything Harry Potter related, send it to me on Instagram and I will post it on my story. That's all for today though, so I'm gonna go prep my stomach for the crap load of candy I'm about to eat. See you guys.